without further ado, we'll jump into it. My name's Binura Gunasekara. I worked in the Choreo team before, but now I'm part of the OpenChoreo team. And yeah, we'll just skip over the boring stuff. Ishara stole my thunder with the announcement. So just to be absolutely clear, we passed the vote to join the CNCF Sandbox, right? Huge shout out to the OpenChoreo team. A lot of work went into it, and shout out to the Choreo team as well, right? So when you do share the news, just to be absolutely clear, we are not part of the sandbox yet. We passed the vote, so we are, the hard part is done. Now it's a problem for the lawyers to sort out the trademarks and all that. So when the official announcement is out, you'll hear about it. And what I will try to attempt to do is a live demo. So there's a good chance I will mess this up. This is the equivalent to testing in production, but we'll have a knack at it anyway. So quick show of hands, how many of you have actually tried OpenChoreo, like downloaded it? I see Samira at the back, that's good to hear. All right, got a few of you, that's good. So maybe this might blow you away. So I'm just going to go back to a terminal here. I'll zoom in. Can you see it? Yep. So installing OpenChoreo is quite simple, right? If you haven't tried it out today, what I would suggest is go to openchoreo.dev once you go home and go to the quick start guide, right? And all you need to run OpenChoreo now is just Docker, just like the API platform. You run that command, and we'll spin up a cluster, do everything within Docker itself, and you'll be good to try out OpenChoreo in its complete glory on your local machine. So what we'll be doing today is just trying out the self-hosted Kubernetes installation. Basically, we'll run a small Kubernetes cluster on my laptop, and we'll install OpenChoreo just to show you how far we've come from early iterations and how easy it is to set everything up, right? So I don't trust the internet here, so I've just got a small recording, a replay basically of what this installation looks like. So this is just me setting up a K3D cluster locally. This takes a few minutes. This is slightly sped up. And in here, what I'm doing is installing Cert Manager, right? If you haven't heard of Cert Manager, it's not something you need to worry about, just an implementation detail, right? That's just me struggling. And there you go. Cert Manager is now up and running. So what we are going to do next is set up the control plane, right? So the control plane is essentially the brains of OpenChoreo. That is, it runs on Kubernetes itself, and basically coordinates all the deployments that go into the data plane. It wires up the observability plane. It tells the build plane what to do. In every sense, it is the control plane. And if you notice the output from here, we've set up the console. It's running on localhost. And we've also got Thunder. So we ship Thunder by default as the identity provider. But as with all things OpenChoreo, which we'll get to in a bit, it is optional, right? You can plug your own identity provider, but we like to keep it in the family, so we ship Thunder as the default identity provider. So you're now setting up the data plane, and once you set up the data plane, we need to register the data plane with the control plane. So we do that through an agent. If you're familiar with our SaaS offering, we used to do the same thing with the Nitsan agents. So the same thing, but a bit better and a lot faster. So we are now verifying that the data plane agent is connected to the control plane. We'll just let that, again, that's me just struggling to type. Just checking the logs, and if you look here, you'll see that our data plane is now connected to the control plane. So the next step is setting up the build plane, right? So the build plane is, at least as of this moment, powered by Argo Workflows, which is a Kubernetes native workflow project. But again, with OpenChoreo, we may have other flavors of CI systems that you can plug in to the build plane. So you might have Jenkins X. You could omit the build plane and have GitHub Actions, right? So the whole philosophy behind OpenChoreo is to give you a good starting point. It's not even a starting point. It is a fully fledged platform that you can build and expand as your internal development platform on day one, right? So we're doing a bunch of things. We are registering the observability plane now. So the observability plane, again, just like the build plane, is powered by a particular selection of technologies. Right now, it's OpenSearch, Prometheus, and a few more other open source tools. But again, we are looking at plugging in other observability tooling as different modules that can power the OpenChoreo observability plane. And with that, it's all done. I have a local cluster running with OpenChoreo. I have 3 different planes installed, like the data plane, the build plane, the observability plane, and of course the control plane. And all of that was just installed with Helm, right? And if I go back here, this is what we've just set up, right? So you see the control plane in the middle. We put up the build plane, we put up the observability plane, and we put up a single data plane, right? So this is a smaller setup. This is the OpenChoreo portal, right? So this is served from localhost. I'll sign in. And this is Thunder powering our initial sign-in. So if I go home to my home page, we have our initial blank slate, which is the Backstage portal, right? If you haven't heard of Backstage, Backstage is one of the highest, I don't know what the right word is, one of the highest ranking projects in the CNCF, right after Cilium. It's quite popular, and it's a great framework to build an internal developer platform, but Backstage just gives you the portal. So with OpenChoreo, you get the whole thing, right? And we'll explore what that means in a second. So what I want to do now is quickly go ahead and deploy something, right? Google Cloud has a great example. They call it the microservices demo. It's a bunch of microservices that you can deploy. And this is, of course, Google's hosted version of it. It gives you a shopping e-commerce site. So what I want to do is take OpenChoreo's version of it and just deploy it, right? So because OpenChoreo is completely Kubernetes native, I can just kubectl apply. Oops, before that I might need to create a project. So I've applied those to OpenChoreo. Now, if I now go to my catalog, it is eventually consistent. We'll give it a second. So I can actually interact with OpenChoreo through Kubernetes, if you can see that. Now the important difference here is we've elevated Kubernetes from just an application deployment platform to an actual platform, right? The platform itself is declaratively represented as Kubernetes resources. Now the control plane can interact with a distributed set of clusters, so you can have a bigger setup than what's running on my laptop right now. But it gives you a certain set of abstractions to work with, not just for deploying applications, but also to wire up observability, to create builds, manage environments between different clusters, to promote between those environments, to manage your configuration and secrets and all that. So these are the microservices that I just created from the Google demo. Just go back here. And now you can see that we've populated our internal developer portal, right? And if I go to the front-end component, for example, I see this is basically Backstage, right? Backstage with a couple of additions from OpenChoreo. And if I look at the deploy view, I can see that there's an invoke URL. Let's try our luck. At times it takes a while for it to spin up, especially because of my internet connection over here. So it's spinning, upstream request timeout. So that's a good instance for me to look at the logs. So with OpenChoreo, you don't need to set anything up, right? I can just go here, and I can look at what the problem is. Because OpenChoreo takes care of logs, your metrics, and everything you need to manage your operations on day 2 once you deploy. So based on this, it's saying I got a 500 from another service. Actually, there you go. So this is the Google microservices demo running on my laptop on OpenChoreo, and I have access to builds. I have access to deploying this onto multiple environments. I have access to logs. I have access to all the metrics, like how much CPU and memory my components are using. Effectively, you have a platform that can manage any scale of deployment, and it's highly customizable, right? So what I'll do now is quickly show you something else. Just have this little quickly get a token, and I'll just open up Codex. You can use Claude or whatever. So OpenChoreo is a AI native internal developer platform. So what that means is the OpenChoreo control plane exposes a set of MCP servers and tools. So just like how I can interact with the platform as a human, we envision that there'll be agents and whatever other non-human actors will come up in the future will interact with your internal development platform. We have AI writing a lot of the code today, but in the future, it usually we want those agents to be able to go beyond just coding, right? And as of today, when you do try to go beyond coding, you end up deploying to your simple services like a container as a service, your Vercels of the world, but that is usually not fit for enterprises that run their own Kubernetes clusters, have their own compliance requirements. So effectively, your LLMs and agents can interact with your internal developer platform under the same constraints that I would as a developer or a platform engineer, right? Under the same authorization rules and policies. So without prompting Codex with any additional instructions, I'll try my luck. Maybe we'll say list the projects in OpenChoreo. All right. Again, this is without any pre-prompting or giving additional context. Most of the time, you can just talk to it and get something done, right? So it's using the MCP tools, the server, and the tools that are exposed by the OpenChoreo control plane, which is again running in my local machine, and it's giving me an answer. So what I want to do next is I want to promote all the components in the GCP microservice demo project to the staging environment. Now there's like probably 10 different components. I could click through, or I could use a GitOps kind of setup to promote it. But in this case, I can just ask it to promote it, and it'll figure out what the deployment pipelines are, what the components are. It's doing something. Let's see. Promotions kicked off from development to staging for all components. All right. You want me to monitor them until they're ready? Yeah, sure. Why not, right? So if I go back here, voila, look at that. So now I can vibe code and just vibe deploy my way to production. Anyway, that's just a quick demo. There's a lot of other things that I do want to cover, and I might be running out of time. So I'll just quickly switch over to the slide deck, and we'll continue from there. And I do encourage all of you to try out OpenChoreo. It's super easy to set up on your local machine and give it a spin. So if somebody asks you what OpenChoreo is, this is a difficult question to answer, right? Because OpenChoreo does a lot of things. Technically, we are an internal developer platform, but in the ecosystem, a lot of different competitors and other projects have come up with their own variations of what that term means. So we go with this, right? So if somebody asks you what that is, you tell them that OpenChoreo is an open source developer platform for Kubernetes that offers development and architecture abstractions, which is important, right? Because no one else does that. We use a backstage powered developer portal, right? So it's modular and you can plug in your own stack your tools. And it doesn't stop at being a portal. It gives you the whole foundation for application CI/CD, GitOps, and observability, right? So it's everything that you need to run an enterprise developer platform on Kubernetes. And then the million-dollar question is why this project exists, right? Why do you need an internal developer platform? Why platform engineering exists in the first place? So this is just a quick detour, and we'll come back to the OpenChoreo specifics. This is just to explain why this is an important problem that we've decided to solve. This is just one article that I'm quoting, but if you do look around on the internet, you will find out that most of the time, 40 to 50% of the time, in fact, developers are not really delivering shareholder value, right? They're doing non-core work. Based on this report, you spend about 16% of your time doing development work. But with AI, I'm sure it's much less nowadays. But you still spend the rest of that 50% doing auxiliary dev work, which is like requirements gathering, writing tests, figuring out your UX, solving problems. I think that portion will probably become bigger as AI takes over like the more primitive coding work. But at the same time, you're still stuck managing a whole bunch of other stuff on the other end of the spectrum, right? So that time is wasted. So if you really think about it, it's like a kitchen where you only spend 50% of the time figuring out, where you spend 50% of the time cooking and 50% of the time figuring out what's wrong with your oven or which oven you're going to use, right? The same analogy applies to anywhere. If you're running a hospital and your doctors are only spending 50% of the time seeing patients, right? And as developers, we are so accustomed to this idea of, going out there, wrestling with the infrastructure, figuring out what's underneath, figuring out which road to take, just to get from point A to point B, right? So this is why platform engineering became a thing. And platform engineering in its very essence is the discipline of building internal developer platforms. It's not about the more traditional operational way of creating more processors, creating operating standards, which are still important. But platform engineering is more about creating a product-centric, a developer-focused environment for your development and R&D teams, so they can focus on coding, vibing, and then shipping it out to their customers, right? Because that is what you expect from your developers, and that's where value comes from development, right? You need to be able to focus on building features, hammering out bugs, observing how things are working so you can improve on performance and other bottlenecks without actually having to figure out what's happening under the hood, right? So this is where OpenChoreo sort of comes in as a complete platform that you can start from day one. A lot of problems with platform engineering stem from the fact that people underestimate the sheer amount of effort, the cost, and the time it takes to build an internal developer platform from scratch, right? A lot of time, even the prospects that we've spoken to, they go over budget, they miss their deadlines, or whatever timelines that they have, and they spend a lot of money, and at the end of the day, they realize they still fall short of these expectations that they had of platform engineering and internal developer platforms coming in and fixing every problem that they have, right? Because building a platform is one thing, because most of the time when you start building a platform, you combine technology. You bring Kubernetes in, you bring OpenSearch in, you bring Argo workflows in, and you wire them together, right? You write some bash scripts, but you don't really build a platform, right? Your developers still jump from portal to portal, figuring out where do I go next. So wiring it is one problem. Then you have to sort of productize it. There's a lot of talk about how platform engineering needs to treat the platform as a product. We won't get to that today, but basically this is where OpenChoreo comes in, right? You don't need to figure out what tools you're going to use, how you're going to maintain it, how you're going to wire them together. We've done this a million times in the past, and we've brought in all the tools that we think will work without an issue, and we give you a framework, a foundation that's ready to use from day one, right? Effectively, like you saw in the demo, you don't really have to turn any of the keys to get started. You install it, and you're good to go. You can get your developers to start using it, right? You can get your platform engineers to start working on it from day one, and there is, as far as I know, no other project in the ecosystem that gives you the same set of capabilities, right? So OpenChoreo has a few design philosophies. One is that it's modular by design. When you install OpenChoreo, the only core parts are the control plane and the data plane, because without the data plane, you can't really deploy them anywhere. Everything else, like the observability plane, the build plane, your identity provider, your API gateway, they're all optional, right? So core parts of the system are also optional, like the planes, and also platform capabilities are provided as modules. We'll get to those in a second. And it's completely extensible and built to be integrated with your tools. It's something we've realized. A lot of enterprises aren't starting off in their platform maturity journeys. They're somewhere in the middle, right? They've got something, they've invested in some tooling. For example, CI, right? Every company has some kind of CI system, at least GitHub Actions, right? A lot of the time, there's some effort and investment has gone into it. And when you don't want to really rip everything out and replace it with a black box, right? So OpenChoreo is sort of built to work around that problem, building on the same foundations as Backstage, right? We are modular. You can plug modular add-ons, or you can write your own, because we give you the framework to develop your own modules. It is AI native. It's not AI native in the sense we are doing AI management or AI gateway stuff. All of that is provided from our sister products. Right? The agent manager runs on OpenChoreo. Stick around until after this session. I think Asanka will speak about that. Like Nuan said, we use WSO2's API platform as to power our API management module. So it's all built on, and you can always choose. If you don't want API management, you don't have to use it, right? And then, of course, the flexible deployment model, which brings me onto this plane. You can set up OpenChoreo in whatever way that makes sense for your organization. What you saw in the demo earlier is the first one on the, you can see my cursor probably, yeah. It's just one cluster running on my laptop with all the planes running in that one cluster, but you can split that up, right? And you can go the whole 9 yards and combine them in different ways. You can have a data plane and a build plane in a single cluster. You can put your development environments in that cluster, right? Just to save some costs. You can put your production environments in another cluster with a data plane. You can take the observability plane out. You can put it back in however you want, right? You're not opinionated about how you deploy OpenChoreo. And then when it comes to interacting with OpenChoreo, again, we have two main personas that we target. We have our developers and we have our platform engineers, right? The platform engineers build platform capabilities. They expand on what OpenChoreo provides. They configure OpenChoreo, basically. And developers are the end users of those platform engineers, right? And we also want LLMs and AI agents to work on behalf of those users and sort of interact with the platform. And that's sort of what gives OpenChoreo that AI native foundation. It is also completely GitOps native because it's declarative, but again, I'll say that for a second. So this is our future roadmap. We are working on the SRE agent at the moment. So what you saw me interacting before in the demo was the control plane MCP server. So just like the MCP server, we'll have a Kubernetes MCP server for accessing deployments in the data plane through the control plane API. There'll be an observability MCP that is currently being worked on, so you can ask an agent to go figure out what went wrong, right? And this is a good example of a feature that's working in progress. It's a root cause analysis agent. You can set up an alert in OpenChoreo, and when you get the alert, you can configure it so that the RC agent kicks in, and it looks at the logs, it looks at the metrics, and it tries to give you an idea of why it failed, right? It's not meant to go out there and figure everything out right now, but in the heat of an incident, if you can get a decent enough suggestion, it could save you a lot of time, right? So this is where we see AI and platform engineering sort of merging, just making your life easier when it comes to these repetitive, toilful tasks. So GitOps, again, is built into OpenChoreo. Unlike previous versions of Choreo, we made it a point to make OpenChoreo completely declarative, meaning we work on top of the Kubernetes CRD model, and you can define the entire state of your platform, not just your applications, right? The state of your data plane, the modules that you're using, all of that can be declaratively defined in a Git repository. So not only are you deploying applications through Git, you're also defining the entire state of your platform in Git. So if something goes wrong, you just point it to another cluster and you can bring it all back up again, right? Unfortunately, we don't have time to look at a GitOps demo, but there is documentation. We just released some of the GitOps capabilities. So have a look at that in our documentation if you're interested in learning more. So another big feature is the component types and traits. So if you've worked with Choreo before, like our SaaS offering, you'll know that we had a set of fixed component types. So we've taken a different approach with OpenChoreo. We made it a framework to sort of build your own component types. We've integrated a bunch of technologies like Cell, and we've built our own in-house templating engine, which is verifiable, it's type safe, and it's strongly typed. So you can, as a platform engineer, I am no longer installing a black box into my environment. I can be in complete control of what gets deployed into my environment, right? OpenChoreo ships with a set of defaults, right? Some base component types, and you can use that and extend it however you want. Now, it's a big topic on its own, so unfortunately, I won't have time to get into specific examples, but again, have a look at the documentation, and you'll see what that means. There is also another trait system where you can define your component types, and you can attach capabilities as separate resources. So you can have a set of component types, like you can have a web application, an HTTP REST API component type, and you can have cross-cutting traits, like adding a volume mount, adding a scale to zero policy, an API management policy as traits. And your developers, when they deploy a web application, they can compose that with the scale to zero policy, right? Again, this is a very high-level overview of what this system does, but have a look at the documentation, and hopefully it'll make a lot more sense. So this I added a slide here just to highlight the difference between our existing Choreo SaaS offering and OpenChoreo. As some of you might know, OpenChoreo is a complete rewrite of Choreo, right? It's not necessarily another iteration or part of a natural evolution of Choreo. We've taken a lot of things that worked in Choreo and we rewrote OpenChoreo, right? So in effect, apart from the names, they are different products and they behave differently, and we'll look at those differences in a bit. A lot of the time, answering the question as to why it's a rewrite is difficult without getting into the nitty-gritties, right? So I was just looking for metaphors or examples, and I found this. So this is called the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Now take this as with a handful of salt, because I am not a doctor or a biologist. But turns out our larynx and our brain are connected through a nerve called this laryngeal nerve, right? And you would think it's a straight line, but apparently it's not. It goes around your heart and comes back up. Right? And that's the same with giraffes and apparently with other vertebrates as well. So it goes down a couple of meters, goes around the heart, and comes back to the larynx. And turns out evolution couldn't fix it because it's because we got it from one of our ancestors that were fish, or like fish-like ancestors. Right? So the same thing applies for evolution to fix this problem. It looks like it might have to wipe out a set of species and create some new ones, right? So just like that, Choreo has certain philosophical design principles that are hard to change. And that's what makes Choreo, right? Choreo is focused for developers. OpenChoreo is focused on empowering platform engineering teams to build platforms for their developers, right? We want to give more power to platform engineering teams to sort of take control of their internal platforms. And we've sort of had a shift in design philosophy. With Choreo, we tried to abstract away from Kubernetes, but with OpenChoreo, we are abstracting on top of Kubernetes. So when you're using OpenChoreo, you don't lose anything that you can do with Kubernetes, right? So the whole idea is you don't obscure it, you sort of build on top of it. We only augment it, right? And then in terms of footprint, just like the other products, like Thunder and the API platform, OpenChoreo's footprint is drastically lower than Choreo. I mean, you can run it on your laptop, which was not something that was possible on the SaaS offering, right? Again, you can go through the list, and I'm sure you can see the pattern here, right? And this is why OpenChoreo is a rewrite. Just building on the things that worked for Choreo and also working on things that didn't work so well. This doesn't mean that Choreo is going away. It's still a very powerful platform. It's powering a lot of enterprises out there. It'll continue to be there. OpenChoreo, just like Thunder and IIS, will continue to go down as two different products. So here's how you can help. Please do tell your friends, have a look at the documentation, try it out. In essence, what we expect is if you run Kubernetes and if you need to build a portal on top of Kubernetes, like if you're installing Backstage, OpenChoreo is a natural fit, right? If you're running Kubernetes, there is no reason why you shouldn't be running OpenChoreo because the system overhead is so low and the capabilities and the benefits, they just outweigh whatever the cost that is of the system overhead, which again is tiny, right? So have a look at the repository, give us a star. We've been collecting stars. We are almost at 600 stars. So hopefully by the end of this session, we'll have 650, 700. I am out of time, but maybe I could take a question.